All right. Good morning to one and all of you guys. So let's resume our discussion on the basic terminologies in Oracle Identity Manager. So uh, if you remember, we actually talked about the resource object. Then we moved on to the process form and then adapters and so on. Okay. So in this particular module, we are going to primarily talk about one other important parameter, which is IT resource and the IT resource type. Okay. So IT resource is nothing but it is an important parameter that has all the connectivity related parameters whenever OM is actually going to be integrated with various endpoints. Like you would have Exchange server, you would have an Active Directory server, database server, and so on, and across your enterprise. And OM would have to communicate with the various endpoints, and it has to know to which particular IP address it needs to talk to, or a host name it needs to talk to, and to which port it is listening to, and so on. Okay, so all those parameters would be put into IT resource type, or sorry, IT resource. Okay, now with the same understanding, okay, IT resource type is nothing but the collection of the various IT resources falling under one particular type, like be it an Exchange server or an Active Directory server or the database server or email server. All the collection of those various you know uh, types would be grouped under one particular parameter, which is an IT resource type. So like if we have uh, like 5 to 6 IT resources configured for an AD, like it could be one IT resource for AD could be corresponding to your primary domain controller in Pune office, and the other one could be in the Chennai office or Bangalore office, and so on. Okay, so you can actually group them all in the one particular IT resource type for Active Directory. Similarly, you would be configuring various other uh, IT resources under similar types. Okay, like database, email server, database server, Exchange server, and so on. So as you can see here, I've just logged on to the system admin console, okay, to show you the IT resource option here. Okay, so once you click on this under provisioning configuration, it brings up a window, so where you can see the various parameters IT resources created. Like since in my environment I already have an Active Directory service now, all that configured on the same machine here. Okay, you are able to see the various IT resources. Okay, so also just wanted to highlight that, like all these AD1, the Exchange service, now all these I really did not have to manually create them, but they're all created when we installed the connector, the respective connector. Okay, so uh, in Oracle, as we discussed earlier, we all have various predefined out-of-box connectors available for various endpoints. And if we need to create, if there is any endpoint for which we don't have an out-of-box connector available, then you may have to manually create the various parameters like resource object, IT resource type, process forms, and so on. Okay, so just as an example, I'm going to quickly show you the Active Directory here. Okay, so here, as you can see, it has the admin username and password. This is the, because I've got the AD installed on this machine, I've just given the admin name and the password here, and the domain name is just the fictitious domain name with which I've created, and the complete distinguished name of the OU, or I would say the complete distinguished name of the of the domain under which all the users are managed. So that is actually having the container parameter. Okay, and then whether this is having any SSL communication, I don't have any, because it's just a test instance or just my local lab instance, and then the host name and so on. Okay, so similarly, you will have the various attributes for an Exchange one. Okay, let me show that one here. So if I just click on last, and then here just click on edit, here you can see the Exchange server host, the type, username and password, and so on. Okay, so that's the high level overview about what an IT resource and IT resource type. Okay, and as I said, this is the type. So IT resource type is basically, it's just like a template, you can say. I will just show you this demo, like how to create the IT resource type and how this is actually referenced in an IT resource parameter. So that will give us a clear understanding. Okay. So I've just created one IT resource type with the name CyberSec IT resource type just a while ago. Okay. Because I just wanted to follow the same naming convention. If you want, I can just show or create a new IT resource type. Okay. With dummy IT resource type. Okay. I'm just going to save this here. Okay, so let me just, I think it's created. For some reason, it's just getting hung. Okay, let me close this. I'm going to close my design console. I'm going to quickly re-log in. Okay, so yeah, so the dummy ID resource has been created now. Okay, so what I wanted to show you here is, like, I just want to follow the same naming convention of the, whatever, in whichever resource object which we created. So let me just continue with the same IT resource parameter, CyberSec IT resource type. Okay, so once it is created, it would be just blank at the moment. Okay, so what we need to do is, you will click on add. Okay, and then here you will just give host name, and then just give localhost, something like this. Okay, and then IP address. Okay, you can just give something like 10.1 dot something, whichever name, whichever IP address corresponds to your host machine there. Okay, and then username, just give Exashal, then password, and just give. Okay, so, or I'll just give something like test password, or I'll just give it like, it is just going to be in plain text here. Okay, then you can actually make it encrypted later. Okay, so I'm just going to give it like, save this parameter here. So now the IT resource type has been created. Okay, now this template, like the host name, IP address, username, and password, would be referenced whenever we are going to create an IT resource falling under this particular IT resource type parameter. Okay, so if you see here, if we log back to the system admin console. Okay, now I'm just going to click on search. Okay, so far we have just created only the IT resource type. Okay, now I'm going to create an IT resource parameter for CyberSec one. Okay, so here, CyberSec IT resource. Okay, so in the design console, we just created an IT resource type, which is a template, and this IT resource type, we are going to refer it here. Okay, I think it's just taking some time. So once we select this particular, CyberSec IT resource, okay, in the end, okay, you're going to see that whatever parameters which we set it up earlier are going to be referenced here, or they are just going to get populated here. Okay, so for some reason it's just taking some time, but let me just try to close it and reopen it for you. Yeah, So I'm just going to select this one, CyberSec IT resource type. These are the same things, same parameters that we saw earlier here. Okay. Okay. I don't know, for some reason it's when I just click on it, it's not responding. So let me select this here. Okay. And now we are going to talk about a remote manager in a separate module. Okay, let me just leave this field blank and just click on continue. Okay, so as soon as we click on continue, it should actually, we should be able to see whatever parameters that we given here. Okay, should be populated automatically there. Okay. Oh, my system is behaving extremely slow here, guys. Sorry about that. Yeah. So I think these parameters got auto-populated now. I'm just going to click on continue. Okay. So here, once we specify these various connectivity related parameters, then it would ask us all the, the system administrator roles, or, the administrative privileges if we need to grant. We just, select next, retaining those default values, and then, we click on finish in the end. So that's how IT resource and IT resource type parameters would be configured. Okay. So yeah, so here in this module, this particular step, you will be just giving some access permissions. Okay. So by default, these two roles would be having these default permissions. If you want to just unassign or assign more roles, you can actually add it. And then, there will be one more step. I think in step 4, you would be, giving some what do you call the specific parameters related to the, yeah, you'll just verify the IT resource details. Okay. And then in the finally, if you just click on continue, you'll be just clicking on finish. Just it would show summary, and then you just click on finish. That's it. Okay, so thanks for listening to me patiently, guys. So I'm just going to wind up this module. Let's continue later. Thank you.